Chair, the meeting's live on YouTube.
Unfortunately, I've lost you. I don't know why, but I've just lost you.
Okay, well, we can hear you and see you.
Yeah.
I can't see anything.
It's probably gone behind something on your screen.
I have tried and it just says I'm a post attendee. So I'll try again.
Can I make the suggestion, Chair, because we can see you and hear you. Can I suggest you hand over the meeting for the moment to perhaps Councillor Addison, who could take us through the housekeeping rules, and you log out and log back in?
I'll try my best. Okay.
Are you able to do that, Councillor Addison?
I haven't got a script in front of me, Paul, so...
Okay.
I've got it. Sorry, got it. Thank you.
Okay.
So thank you very much. I don't know quite what happened with my computer. I think a pop-up reminded me to refresh my Adobe installer. So I think that's what did it. So I've managed to get rid of it. So we are back on track. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the public, councillors, and anyone watching on YouTube. This is a meeting where the public are allowed to attend. The only time that the public may participate is when they have previously asked to present a petition, and they'll be in the waiting room till then, but may follow it on YouTube. The meeting will follow the usual format: apologies for absence, declarations of interest, and this evening we have 3 items on the agenda. I will ask the officers, who will each give a presentation and a recommendation for the said item. And we have 3 speakers this evening, possibly 4. I'm going to ask the first speaker after the first if he wishes to join us. And there'll be a time limit of 5 minutes for each speaker. So can I start with apologies for absence, please? Do we have any?
Yeah, Chair, I have apologies for absence from Councillors Isles, Latter and Sims.
Thank you. And does any member have any personal interest to declare that they may have in the business discussed? No, thank you. We now go on to the minutes of the previous meeting on Wednesday, the 7th of October, 2020 via Zoom. Do we have any comments, or can I have a proposer and seconder for this? Councillor Addison.
Move, Chair.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Brown. Thank you. All those in favour, raise your hands. The minutes have been passed. We now move on to the first application. Is Mr. Robertson there? Do we know, Pauline?
Chair, I'm trying to find Mr. Robinson on the list. I can't see him now.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll carry on and we'll work it out at the end of the meeting, at the end of this item. So can I ask the officer concerned to give a presentation on application number 20/002464/HHA, the conversion of garage and first floor extension over the garage of 52 Hempland Close, Corby. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Will the slides be shown?
Who's in charge of the slides?
Sorry, I'm just getting them up on screen, hopefully.
Thank you very much.
As long as it's not me, it's my my first one being this way round. So
This is, yeah.
Can you see them?
No.
All right. How do I get back to Zoom now?
Sorry.
Can you see the set I've got, Chair?
Yes. No, I can't see anything. All we can see is we can't see. Ah, Hang on. I think Laura's.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Okay.
The joys of technology. Can you carry on, please? We can now see the slides.
Okay, so 20/00246/HHA is an application at 52 Hempling Close, Great Oakley, Corby, and is for the conversion of a garage to living accommodation and a first floor extension over the existing garage. Next slide, please. This here shows the location plan of exactly where the application is, with it outlined in red. Next slide, please. And this shows in a little bit more detail the location. The area that is shaded horizontally is the present single-storey garage, which is proposed to have the first floor extension over. And just so we don't have to come back to this slide, we will be looking at images from the gardens of the property to the north and the property to the east. So please do bear that in mind when we're looking at the photos later on. Next slide. This is the application site. As you can see, it has the double garage there, which is existing, and the future slides will show the proposal. Next slide, please. So this photograph is taken from the neighbour adjacent, and the building you can see, which is the single garage, obviously the proposal is proposed to be built on top of there. Next slide, please. And this photograph is taken from the garden to the rear, and if the proposal is to be built ahead, the first floor extension will obviously sit on top of the at present single garage. Next slide, please. Sorry. Can I have the next slide? Sorry.
Apologies, my arrow button seems to have decided not to work. Where are we going? It won't move. Let's try and go back to the.
We seem to have the gremlins tonight.
Yeah. Let's try again.
Thank you.
So these are the existing elevations, which show the current side single story double garage. Next slide, please.
Sorry, same problem again. Let's try. It's completely frozen at the moment. It won't let me out.
Laura, can I suggest you stop sharing your screen and I will share my screen and see if we can work it from there. Okay. Okay, Chair, I will try and share my screen and see if we have any more luck.
Thank you.
Apologies to my colleague for the delay. And we're on to the next slide, are we?
Next
Yes,
one.
please.
Okay.
Okay, so these drawings show the proposals, which are proposed to be in materials that are in keeping. And as you can see on the drawing top right, the double garage doors will be converted into windows with the extension over the top, as you can see there. Next slide, please. And these are the proposed floor plans, of which show that they want to convert the existing garage into living area, a lounge and a shower area downstairs, with the upstairs to be an additional bedroom. Next slide, please. Okay, so the key determining issues. The application has come to committee due to a number of objections, all of which are from the surrounding neighbours. The proposed extension is designed in an appropriate manner, and the position of number 52 being on the corner means the extension will have little impact on the street scene. Objections from the neighbours were raised on the loss of light as a result of the proposal. An overshadowing analysis was commissioned by the applicant and was conducted by the Right of Light Chartered Surveyors. The report was taken from 3 different dates in March, June and December at 2-hour intervals between 8 AM and 6 PM. The report is designed to show the impact that the extension would have on the neighbours and the overshadowing. The report shows negligible impact to the near neighbours. While the proposal will cause a limited measure of overshadowing to the neighbours, it is not considered to cause significant harm to the natural light of the neighbours and therefore does not constitute a reason for refusal. Next slide, please. The consultation responses were environmental services, no objection. The sustainability officer suggested an electric vehicle charging socket, and Northamptonshire County Council Highways eventually managed to make it so that the parking spaces were suitable and now have no objections. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, the proposed scheme for a garage conversion and first floor extension results in no significant material elevational changes to the fabric of the building or to the detriment of the adjacent area. As previously mentioned, a shadowing analysis was commissioned by the applicant and the report did show there was negligible impact to near neighbours. Next slide, please. The proposal would not have an adverse impact on the amenity and the living conditions of existing and future occupiers. The proposal is considered to comply with Policy 8 of the Northamptonshire Joint Core Strategy 2016 and the requirements of the National Planning Policy Framework 2019. Next slide, please. My recommendation is for approval, and thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry about the gremlins tonight. I apologise in advance to the public and to the officers concerned. It's just one of those evenings. I've just had a message from Councillor Ferguson, who seems to be having similar problems to myself, and he seems to be in the waiting room. I don't know if one of the officers can make sure he gets back in.
I've let Councillor Ferguson back in, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have any comments from, does anybody wish to speak or ask questions about this? Councillor Adam. Yes.
Chair, sorry, we do have a member of the public and we did say that we would...
Oh, I do. Yes, I do remember. Thank you for reminding me.
Invite Mr. Robertson if he wishes to make any contribution.
Yes.
Hello, it's Mr. Robertson here. Unfortunately, I was moved into the waiting room, so I didn't hear the very start of the discussion. But what I've heard, there's nothing more that I need to add from what Daniela has already commented on. But thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. You'll be moved back to the waiting room. If you want to watch it, you can watch it on YouTube. Thank you, Daniela. You did very well considering all the blips that we had. Right, thank you. I don't think I've forgotten anything else, have I, Paul?
So just if members want to make any comments now.
Thank you. Right, it's going to be one of those nights, I can see. Councillor Addison, I think you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. There are no windows, Daniel, on the garden, I think it's looking to the east and onto the two neighbouring gardens. Is there any windows there that will overlook the gardens or?
There aren't any windows that overlook gardens. Proposed are two skylights, which we have insisted, and the applicant very kindly did as we asked, to raise the height so that if an occupier did want to have a look at the neighbour's garden, they would have to climb on something in order to view that.
Okay.
So there isn't any overlooking issues.
And the actual structure of the garage, which butts both gardens, will that be left there? I know that's not a planning consideration, but it's just the convenience of the neighbours, really.
I believe that it is going to be built directly on top of, and there is also a condition which is going to restrict the building work to be in social hours, just so that it doesn't cause future any disturbance to the neighbours, because they are all obviously very tight knit and close together.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. That preempted my question. I was going to ask about social hours, but you've already covered that. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Councillor Watts.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. My question is about whether this could, at some later point, get a new front door and become a separate dwelling. Just whether that's a possibility.
Obviously, if that is what they want to do, they will have to apply for planning permission, and then that will be judged on its own merits then. I have had great discussions with the applicant, and even though it is possible for that to happen, I personally don't believe at this stage by this applicant that will be an issue in future. The applicant has lived there for 20 years, and if you have a look at the plans, there are some very expensive features such as a suspended staircase, which I believe wouldn't lend itself to being a HMO. Does that answer your question?
Does that answer your question, Councillor Watts?
It does. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from anybody? Councillor Dady.
Thank you. First of all, I do want to apologise for being late. I've been trying to log on since 10 to 7. Computer problems meant, well, I was a bit late. So sorry about that. Anyway, no, it's more I wanted to make a point following on from what Councillor Watts just said. And I know this isn't a material consideration, and I won't be basing my vote on this. I did just want it to be noted that it is a potential concern in that this could be used as a separate dwelling, and obviously that's not what the neighbours would want. So as I say, I won't be voting based on that because I can't, but would just like it noted. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen? Mr. James?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just remind members, and it might be me getting the wrong end of the stick, but if any member has not actually seen the whole of the presentation, then they really shouldn't vote. So if any of the members, I think off the top of my head, Councillor Dady's had logging on problems. Councillor Ferguson at one stage was in the waiting room. If they missed any of the presentation, really they shouldn't vote on this application.
Thank you. Did you hear the whole of this, Councillor Dady, or were you not on time?
I did miss the first little bit, so yeah, I probably should wait.
And Councillor Ferguson? We seem to have lost him again.
Chair, Councillor Ferguson's lost connection again, so he would be.
He won't be able to vote. Right,
yeah,
thank you.
prohibited anyway.
Also, I wasn't here at the very beginning for the very first few minutes.
Did you hear the beginning of the presentation or not?
No, I did not.
Thank you. It really is going to be one of those evenings. Yes, Councillor Addison.
I'd like to move the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Brown. Right, I shall go through people individually and ask them if they wish to approve this application. Councillor Addison,
For.
Councillor DL,
For.
Councillor Brown,
For.
and I think that just leaves myself for. So I don't think there's anyone else that I can ask. So that's a unanimous for this application. Thank you. And we now go on to item 2. The application 20/00198/RBC, the proposed variation of condition 13 pursuant to planning at permission at Little Stanion Village Centre. And I believe we have a Mr. Flatman for that.
Yeah, Chair, I'll invite Mr. Flatman's coming back in, but the officer will present their report first. Then you invite Mr. Flatman to address the committee.
Thank you. Thank you. So
What's
can
the
I
re-
have, thank you very much. Can I have the officer to present the second item, please?
Thank you, Chair. Could I have the slides, please? Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee and members of the public joining us tonight. I just want to clarify the application reference number. It is 20/00301/RVC. It is for the village centre at Little Stanion and it's seeking planning permission for the variation of condition 13 of planning permission 17/00702/DPA. And that was a planning application for the erection of 66 two-bedroom apartments, 598 square metres of retail, falling within youth classes A1, A2, A3, A4 and A5. A community hall measuring 435 square metres, associated car parking spaces and all associated works. Condition 13 relates to the provision of a CCTV system at the village centre, and the application is being presented to the committee after an objection to the proposal was received from Little Stanion Parish Council. Next slide, please. So this is the location plan for the village centre. It is adjacent to Little Stanion Primary School with Longcroft Road running east to west just to the north of the site. Next slide, please. So this is the wording of the existing condition that was applied to planning permission 17/00702/DPA. And it says that a scheme showing the details of the CCTV to be installed at the development shall be submitted to and approved by the local planning authority in writing, and that no part of the development permitted is to be occupied before the scheme is carried out as approved. And the reason for that is to design out crime and to promote the well-being of the area. Next slide, please. So the proposed variation proposes that the condition is reworded to a scheme showing the details of CCTV to be installed at the development shall be submitted to and approved by the local planning authority in writing. However, Block C, Phase 5 shall not be commenced before the scheme is carried out as approved, and it's for the same reason. Next slide, please. The application has come about following dialogue between the applicant and the Crime Prevention Design Advisor at Northamptonshire Police and Corby Borough Council CCTV Administrator. The request have come from the police at Northamptonshire and the CCTV Administrator. that the installation of the CCTV system is delayed until the physical construction of blocks A, B, D and E has taken place. The reason for this is to allow sight lines that can be physically verified on the ground, which will improve the accuracy of the communication linkage between the cameras back to the mast that will be on the village centre roundabout. Next slide, please. So the application is seeking planning permission for the trigger point for the implementation of a CCTV within the village centre be put back to enable it to be installed and achieved in the most efficient manner. Experience from previous planning applications show that sight lines are best achieved from the as-built on the ground situation rather than from planning drawings. It often is the case that systems are installed and then amendments are later required after it's found that they're not operating to their full potential. Next slide, please. So consultation exercise was carried out. There were no responses from members of the public. There were no objections from Corby Borough Council Environmental Health Services. Northamptonshire Police fully support the proposal. However, Little Stanion Parish Council have objected to the proposal. Next slide, please. The Parish Council concerns are that the residents of Little Stanion need the safety and security of a CCTV system now and not at some date in the future. This is because there have been reports of ongoing antisocial behaviour, issues and ongoing crime. The Parish Council contend that with 2 blocks in place, then their positions are fixed and therefore using the approved plans from the previous scheme, this could be used to install the system now. Next slide, please. However, the proposal had the full support of Northamptonshire Police and the CCTV administrator at Corby Borough Council, and the application came about following their request. Next slide, please. Officers wish to advise members that the application does not seek to alter the principle relating to the provision of the CCTV system. It's merely related to the timing of the provision to ensure that the system operates to its full potential and is future-proof. The scheme is policy compliant and officers are satisfied that there are no material reasons that would justify refusal of the scheme. Next slide, please. The recommendation is for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. I do believe we have someone to invite in. Bear with me a second.
Chair, Mr. Flatman is already in the meeting. I don't know if he wishes to address the meeting, Chair.
Right, thank you. You have, Mr. Flatman, do you wish to address the meeting?
I do, Madam Chair.
You have, bear with me 1 second while I get my timer. Can I ask you to keep this within 5 minutes, please?
Certainly. Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to address you all via Zoom this evening on behalf of JME Developments. The contextual background to this application is relevant and vital to your considerations. JME met both the Northamptonshire Police Crime Prevention Design Advisor and the Borough Council CCTV Administrator in March this year. The purpose was to agree CCTV positioning so that an application could be submitted to discharge condition 13 by allowing the installation of the CCTV scheme prior to any apartments in the village centre being occupied. However, at that meeting, both the police and council CCTV administrator stated they wished installation to be delayed until completion of the physical construction of the apartment blocks. This will enable physical confirmation that sightlines between CCTV camera communication systems work on the ground prior to final installation. JME were advised that issues had been experienced elsewhere resulting in schemes designed prior to dwelling completions not achieving the necessary communication sightline linkages, and with those systems then failing to operate satisfactorily. Compliance with condition 13 is currently triggered by the first occupation of Block A. Had JMA chosen to ignore the police and CCTV administrator's request and nevertheless submitted an application seeking an immediate discharge of condition 13, undoubtedly the council would have then received objections from the police and CCTV administrator. Therefore, at the express request of the police and the council CCTV administrator, condition 13 trigger point needs amending so that the CCT delivery timing is achieved prior to the erection of the final block of apartments. This is Block C. The only reason this application is before the committee tonight is because the parish council object to this very practical amendment to the timing of the CCTV installation. Of course, equally, it would undoubtedly also be the parish council that would be the first to complain were a CCTV scheme to be provided in accordance with an approved scheme prior to the first occupation of Block A, but then only to subsequently fail to operate effectively due to communication linkage failures between the cameras. However, by then, under such circumstances, JME would have discharged its responsibilities by having constructed the system in accordance with the approved positions. It would then be up to others, presumably the Borough Council and possibly the Parish Council, to be responsible for the cost of subsequently repositioning the cameras. As the very bodies ultimately responsible for operating the system, the police and CCTV administrator does not wish this situation to occur, and quite reasonably JME will only fund the installation of the CCTV system once. In response, the Parish Council objection in respect of the appalling armed robbery at the shop, JME notes that condition 8 of the shop planning permission required an alarm installation and a digital communication link to the existing council CCTV monitoring station, thereby allowing this location to be viewed. The Parish Council also points to acts of crime, antisocial behaviour and vehicle speeding that currently occurs in Little Stanion. This is unfortunately a very sad indictment upon the behaviour of a very small minority of existing Little Stanion residents. However, both the Police Crime Prevention Design Advisor and the Borough Council CCTV Administrator, as the experts in this issue, initiated and support the application before you tonight, seeking amendment to the timing for the discharge of condition 13. Thank you for listening, and JME respectfully requests that you follow the advice of your planning officers and approve this application tonight. Thank you, Madam Chair and councillors.
Thank you, Mr. Flatman. Do I have anybody who wishes to speak? Any councillors? Anthony Dady, Councillor Dady.
Yes, thank you. I apologise if this is in the report and I've overlooked it, but obviously the parish council is saying they'd like cameras as soon as possible, and this potentially is delaying it. How much difference in timing will it make between when they would have got the CCTV and now when they will?
If I may answer that, Madam Chair,
Yes,
there's not a huge difference in timing. The applicant hasn't specified, but 2 blocks have already been constructed. And obviously with the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, there are some uncertainty more so than would normally be the case. But the development is ongoing and it's anticipated that the CCTV system will be up and running early next year.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Dady?
Yeah, so really we're only speaking of maybe 3 or 4 months, something like that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Addison.
Thank you, Chair. While I understand the reason for the objection from the parish council, we do need to be guided by people that are expert in this field, as the police obviously are. So I'd like to move the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor DL. I quite agree. It's not as if we are. It's far better to get it done right the first time, although it is very, very worrying. I'm quite sure after the problem at the shop. Therefore, I'll take it on a vote by vote basis. Councillor Addison, are you for this proposal?
For, Chair.
Councillor DL?
For.
Councillor Brown? Councillor Brown? Can you unmute, please?
For.
Councillor Watts?
For.
Councillor Dady?
For.
Councillor Riley? For. So this proposal is moved. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a report. This is not an opportunity.
Chair,
Yeah.
if I may, can you hold on till Councillor Dady joins us? He's just
Right.
come.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hadn't noticed. Thank you, Edward. Right, have we got everybody here?
Chair, we have Mr. Toller and Mr. Jones have joined us, who will be invited to speak by you after the officer presentation.
Thank you. I just wish to say before the start of this that this is a report. This is a report. It's not an opportunity for the public to comment on this, as this has already been decided. This is an update. We are not revisiting its acceptability. So I'd like to ask the officer concerned to, yes, Ian, the head of planning, wishes to speak. Yeah.
Sorry, Chair, I was just indicating I will be presenting the report.
Sorry, thank you. So I will ask Ian Smith to present the report, please. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee and members of the public participating via Zoom and viewing online. This report relates to 18/00817/OUT land at Cowthwick Plantation, which is an update report following the Secretary of State consultation. This is an approved outline planning permission for the development of land for employment use classes B1, B2 and B8, together with ancillary parking, highway infrastructure, engineering works, landscaping and ancillary works, with all matters reserved. The report before members of the committee tonight is an update report to summarise the steps taken by Corby Borough Council since members originally considered and resolved to approve the outline application on the 29th of June 2020. Next slide, please. The report is being presented to committee to ask members to reconfirm their resolution to grant permission on the 29th of June, having regard to the additional publicity after committee on the 29th of June 2020, which has been carried out via site and press notices, which identified the application as one accompanied by an environmental statement and one which was not in accordance with one or more provisions of the development plan. Secondly, the representations received by the council in response to this publicity and the officer's response to these representations as set out in the update report. Also, to consider the information contained in the referral submission to the Secretary of State, including the supporting statement of material considerations and the Secretary of State's decision not to call in the application, which allows the council to proceed to finally determine the outlined application. And finally, the updated planning conditions and Section 106 obligations, which have been significantly fleshed out since the original report approved on the 22nd of June 2020, and for which officers are satisfied and confident that the conditions and Section 106 obligations are fully SIL compliant. Next slide, please. So, having regard to the information contained in the update report, members are asked to reconfirm their original resolution to grant as follows, with the recommendation being to approve, subject to delegated authority being given to the Head of Planning and Environmental Services to determine the application finalise the planning conditions and Section 106 obligations set out in this update report, and to complete the Section 106 agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, if I may, it's Richard Ford here. I'm the legal officer for this item. I just wanted to pass comment on the purpose of the reconfirmation of the previous resolution. In your opening remarks, you rightly said that the intention is not to go over the ground that was gone through the previous committee to resolve to grant the application. However, of course, members must turn their attention to the representations made, the update report, and consider that for the purposes of reconfirmation. So it is obviously perfectly acceptable and right and proper that members refresh their resolution on this basis. So you're not invited to redetermine the application from scratch, but you are entitled to look at the conditions 106, the representations made, the hard work the officers have put in since the last report, and obviously it is up to you as to whether you wanted to revisit any issues. So I just wanted to make that clear, that that's the purpose of the reconfirmation.
Thank you. So we will hear from Mr. Toller, please. You will have 5 minutes. Bear with me a second. From when you start to speak. Mr. Toller there?
Madam Chair and members of the Development Committee, thank you for allowing me to speak. I understand that this is a report is for the committee to reconfirm to approve the application, and I wish to raise some issues which I believe means that it is wrong for the committee to do so. This whole application has been a rushed process, as highlighted in the 29th of June meeting, when Mr. Smith effectively told you all that this is the last opportunity to get a project of this size approved before the unitary authority replaces the current council next year. Therefore, speed has been very much of the essence, and perhaps this explains why there are so many gaps that need to be filled. I would ask the committee members to read the objection lodged by Mr. Duthie on the 8th of November and read this very carefully in conjunction with the draft S106 agreement. Mr. Duthie has highlighted the fact that it cannot be correct for you to agree to the development moving forward based on a draft form S106, which contains numerous legal inconsistencies and has significant gaps. The largest of which is that there is no detail about the travel plan obligation and no indication of what the travel plan monitoring contribution will be. A further significant issue is that, although the proposed monitor and manage planning conditions now cover all junctions of the A6116, from the A14 to the A43, they only require the developers to carry out regular traffic counts at each junction after phase 1, which is the largest phase, at approximately 50% of the total application. And that is when that phase has been completed and occupied. Bizarrely, there is no obligation on the developer to carry out traffic counts before the development begins. How then would it be possible to assess the impact of the first stage of the development? Given that approval is being sought with only a draft S106 in place and several significant issues remaining to be agreed with the developers, is it constitutionally correct that the committee can approve this application with all these issues outstanding? I would remind the committee that, as was pointed out in an email from Northampton County Council's Highway Division to Corby Borough Council's planning team on the 22nd of July, under Corby Borough Council's constitution, any authority delegated by this committee to the head of planning would only permit him to agree minor changes. Those two words, minor changes, were underlined, to the planning conditions following approval of the application by the committee. And I have no doubt that this restriction also applies to the S106. Even if you do deem that it is within the Council's constitution to delegate this authority to make significant changes to the draft S106, are you able to say that, with the scrutiny that will undoubtedly follow, such authority should be delegated to one individual officer? I would particularly point out that that officer was seen on YouTube immediately following the 29th of June meeting, along with a recently retired Chief Executive Officer of Corby Borough Council, expressing his delight at having succeeded in convincing the committee to approve the application. Would such a decision bear scrutiny and enable Corby Borough Council to honestly say that it has any consideration for any of the local communities outside of its immediate area? I therefore urge you, the Development Control Committee, to reject the Planning Officer's recommendation and to refuse the planning application, or, failing that, to defer further consideration of the application until such time as, firstly, an S106 agreement that is genuinely compliant with Regulation 122 has been agreed and is ready to be assessed by yourselves, and secondly, until the monitor and managed planning conditions have been amended so as to require the applicant, as part of the phase 1 transport assessment, to conduct appropriate traffic surveys and counts at all the junctions listed in condition 23B.
Can I ask you to conclude, please, because your 5 minutes is up.
Sorry, I'm just finishing. Thank you. So it's establishing a meaningful baseline from which the traffic impact from phase 1 can be assessed in order to correct mitigation measures to be identified before further development can take place. And thank you very much for your time, and I'm sorry I overran.
Thank you. I would just like to correct you, because I was there at that time, about the incident between Ian Smith and our chief exec. The relief was at actually being able to get a developer in, because we'd forgotten to that was what was under discussion, not the passing of the development. It was relief at actually getting one of the members in. I'd just like to correct that and have that put on record. Thank you. Right, I now ask Mr. Jones to speak, and you will have 5 minutes.
Good evening, councillors, officers and members of the public. I'm Phil Jones, Managing Director of Mulberry Developments, the applicant for the site, and I would like to thank you for having this opportunity to speak again in support of the application. As members will recall, the application was originally considered at the June 29th meeting when the committee unanimously voted to grant permission subject to the completion of an appropriate 106 agreement and planning conditions. In seeking to implement this resolution, we have positively engaged with officers of both Corby Borough Council and the Highways Authority to ensure that such a legal agreement and conditions not only fully reflect the desires of the committee and the technical needs of the two authorities, but also that they will enable this key development to be brought forward without undue delay. As previously noted at the June committee, the proposals will deliver circa 7,000 new jobs across a range of skills and will contribute millions of pounds to the local economy at a time when economic growth has never been so important. Since the resolution, we have used the intervening period to agree a number of refinements to the draft planning conditions, which, as confirmed by the officer report, include consideration for additional off-site highways works on key identified junctions, as well as a comprehensive and detailed package of monitoring and residual mitigation throughout the phases of the development. These measures are supported by a wide-ranging series of obligations and financial contributions within the draft legal agreement, covering not only highway matters, but also education, training, and ecological improvements, thereby cementing and enhancing the strategic, economic, and ecological objectives of the development plan, and ensuring that the significant job creation and economic benefit provided by the proposals can be secured for Corby. Alongside these proactive discussions, the committee will also note that following the notification to him, the Secretary of State has also confirmed that the proposals accord with the strategic aims of the development plans, and he provides no obstacle to the granting of permission by the Council. Indeed, the acceptability of the proposals and the Secretary of State's clear wish to support the national economic growth is readily apparent from the speed of his response to the notification at only 12 days. Overall, the amendments set out in the draft planning conditions and legal agreement provide the Council with greater certainty over the delivery of the proposals, greater control over the proposed mitigation packages, and provide for a more robust and comprehensive application package, which can be positively accepted by the committee in line with the recommendation given by your officers. By reaffirming the June resolution to grant permission, the Council continue to ensure that the right development is in the right place at the right time to support the continued economic prosperity of Corby Borough Council. Finally, I'd just like to update the committee on the continued and increasing interest of operators in the site and in Corby. Many of you will have seen the steelwork currently being erected at Midlands Logistics Park. Once this unit is finished in the spring, the site will be 100% complete. The global logistics operator referred to at the last committee is preparing itself to commence work on the new site in the spring as soon as planning allows, and we are in discussions with several other notable operators looking to take space. The site is very much in demand and the project is set to be another huge success story for Corby. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, if I may, it's Mr. Ford here. I would just like to deal with some of the points that Mr. Toller made on the Section 106 and Mr. Duthie's representation, if I may, if that's okay.
Absolutely, please do.
Before my colleague does that, I do need to move our two guests back into the waiting room and allow them to continue following the meeting on YouTube. So I'm moving you back into the waiting room now, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Sorry, Richard.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. So I'm just going to deal with representations made by Mr. Duthie, which you'll have seen in the update report. Representation made 8th of November. Officers have responded today actually to Mr. Duthie on this, but I will talk you through what the response is. So Mr. Duthie was essentially making 3 key points. The first point was he was contending that there shouldn't be delegation to the head of planning officer to finalise Section 106 on planning conditions. And you heard some representations from Mr. Toller about that just now as well. And the reference to the scheme of delegation. It is entirely appropriate of a scheme of this size for work to be undertaken, obviously, in relation to refinements to planning conditions and then progression of the Section 106 heads of terms to the full-blown drafting of the Section 106 agreement. That work is largely complete, very nearly 100% complete, but still being finalised in final drafting form of both conditions and 106, although conditions are in hopefully final form. The Section 106 agreement is very nearly in final form. As members will understand, we need to liaise with the County Council legal department as well, which we have been doing, and it is very nearly finished. So the suggestion that it's inappropriate for finalisation of the conditions and the 106, I would disagree with that. I think it's entirely appropriate on a scheme of this magnitude, entirely normal. Now, insofar as any changes may be more than minor, we think that's unlikely to be the case because, as I say, it's virtually in final form. However, there is always the need for some sensible discretion to be given to the head of planning to finalise those conditions of 106, and that is what the resolution requires or requests. So that was point 1. And indeed, frankly, that was also a key thrust of the second point that Mr. Duthie made. And then the third key point was a whole series of drafting points in relation to the suggestion that the Section 106 agreement as it stands in the report, which was approaching final form, contained drafting and obligations that were not sufficiently precise to satisfy Regulation 122 of the SIL regulations. And essentially that requires that there is a sufficient degree of precision to secure the mitigation for the purposes of the obligations being sufficiently precise and certain. Now, we've been through all of those drafting points raised by Mr. Duthie, and officers have responded on a point-by-point basis, being clear that we are satisfied that Regulation 122, as Mr. Smith said in his slides and report, is all of the drafting and all of the points raised are sufficiently clear for the purposes of Regulation 122. I was going to deal with a couple of the substantive points that Mr. Toller raised in relation to traffic counts. So he raised a point that the monitor and manage conditions and the Section 106 agreement working together don't require fresh traffic counts in terms of monitoring of the traffic until after phase 1 has been completed. And that is right. And the reason for that is that obviously there has been a transport assessment done at this outline stage. And then the mitigation measures on a phase by phase basis will be agreed and finalised prior to commencement of that phase. It is then the phase will then be built, and then the monitoring of the effectiveness of those mitigation measures will be determined as a part of monitor and manage. So obviously you build a phase, then you monitor and manage and see whether the mitigation measures that have been scoped and agreed with the County Council prior to that phase have been effective. And I think that's what Mr. Toller is referring to as to when the traffic counts have to be undertaken as part of that monitor and manage. That, of course, is not the same thing as saying that no traffic counts will not be done prior to commencement. Traffic surveys have obviously been done as part of the transport assessment to date. And secondly, there will be an opportunity for further transport update traffic counts to be undertaken when mitigation measures are scoped on a phase by phase basis. So we don't think Mr. Toller is right, nor Mr. Duthie, in what they say about that. In relation to other items, so for example, Mr. Duthie was saying that he was saying that elements of the Section 106 agreement are not finalised. He was talking about the public transport contribution. We have now got agreement from the County Council in relation to that, and that is in essence in relation to bus services contributions and subsidy of services to allow appropriate public transport to buses in relation to the site. So that was an item which Mr. Toller is quite right, was being finalised when the report went to press on the update report, but that has now been agreed with the County Council and will be reflected in the final form of the Section 106 agreement. Just looking at my notes on a couple of the other points. There was concern about whether there was enough detail around the travel plan or the monitoring obligation. Again, we think there is sufficient detail in relation to the Section 106 agreement as it stands in relation to what the travel plan will contain. It is similar and based on the travel plan that's been operational and effective in relation to the Midlands Logistic Park that's already been consented, and the monitoring provisions are also dealt with accordingly. I'm just going to turn to the last point, which was I was just looking to see whether there are any items that I want to highlight from officer's response to Mr. Duthie that I haven't already covered. Just bear with me a second. No, I think we've covered all of the key points. There was a point about whether clawback of obligation funds, whether 10 years was sufficient amount of time. Mr. Duthie was saying it should be 15 years. 10 years in our view is perfectly normal and indeed sufficient. So we've covered that off in response to him as well. So Chair and Committee, I think in relation to Mr. Toller's comments, officers have thoroughly considered them, considered Mr. Duthie's representations, considered all representations made since the previous committee and the previous resolution. I think that officers have done a huge amount of work to progress the Section 106 agreement and refine those conditions since committee. Obviously have done a huge amount of work in relation to the referral to the Secretary of State, and Mr. Smith obviously reported back what the conclusions was of the Secretary of State. So from my perspective, I would commend this resolution to you, and I'm entirely satisfied that all legal matters, including Regulation 122 compliance, has been satisfied. So I think that's my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Has anyone else any comments to make? This report is just for us to note and to accept the updates. Yes, Councillor Dady.
I've had an idea which possibly might be good in the current circumstances. Could we perhaps amend the recommendation so that after it says Head of Planning and Environmental Services, and then it could say in consultation with the chair, and then there will be input from you on behalf of the committee, and it won't be just all in the hands of one person, which might be deemed as being a problem.
That's one way of looking. Does anybody have any thoughts on this? Councillor Watts?
I have to say, it has bothered me since that meeting that we delegated everything away. We're not experts in any of these fields, but we have got common sense. And I really do hope that this scheme is a great success, but it being a great success will make it worse for the people that live along that road. And I really do worry about the situation for those villages, those massive lorries. And I don't know, it's just bothered me from that last meeting that we've just given away all the powers to even ask for things to be looked at or thought about. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to say anything?
Chair, I might just respond to Councillor Watts, if I may. Councillor Watts, just to reassure you, obviously reserve matters approval for the phase by phase basis will come for approval. Officers will need to approve that. Any matters that need to go to committee can go to committee in relation to approvals for reserve matters. All of the mitigation measures to quite rightly address impacts on transport will be dealt with phase by phase, and the monitor and manage regime will ascertain the effectiveness of those transport mitigation measures. And so I do think that it is a comprehensive and robust package of mitigation measures, and quite rightly so, because as you say, it is a big scheme and there are a number of traffic movements generated by them. But I would commend the package of measures that officers have put in place with the applicant as being comprehensive, and we've worked extensively with the County Council in relation to that, both before and after the previous committee. So I would ask you to bear that in mind, please. Thank you.
Anyone else have any thoughts? I'm happy to work with Ian, but we tend to anyway, because I always have a chair's briefing before anything comes up in committee. So if I had any concerns about any of the updates or reviews, then obviously Ian would consult me. So I don't think it's necessary to put it in unless anybody wishes to.
Chair, just wanted to add one point, just for the benefit of both members and with all due respect to those who have expressed their observations and comments on the scheme.
Yes.
The final completion of the 106 will be in the public domain anyway.
Yeah.
And that is a requirement under the National Planning Policy Framework.
Thank you. I do think we have enough in place. I understand people's concerns, but I do think that the way it is structured would actually address all these concerns. I'm tempted. So,
Chair, I do agree with that. I mean, I don't think there is any need for in consultation with the chair, primarily because since the last committee, matters have reached virtually final form. You've had sight of virtually final form of conditions and section 106. You've heard what my advice is, that we're not expecting any material amendments to that. But if there are any matters that we need to address as a result, for example, of County Council final legal comments, then we do want the flexibility to address those. So I do think that it's perfectly normal and you're perfectly entitled to delegate the finalisation. And I think those words aptly sum what we're asking for: the finalisation of the section 106 and conditions based on the pack that you've received in the update report.
Yeah. So is it necessary for us to take a vote now that we approve the update? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Right. Do I have a proposal for acceptance of the update? Councillor Addison. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Brown. I'll go through everybody in individual. Councillor Addison, 4.
4.
Councillor DL.
4.
Councillor Brown.
4.
Councillor Dady.
Yep, 4.
Councillor Watts.
4.
Councillor Riley, 4. So we accept the updates, and thank you very much, everyone, for your input and your time. And I think that that is all we have to do. I would just like to publicly say that I would like to send our condolences to James Moore's family. He was from JME Civils for the Little Stanion development, because he sadly passed away quite suddenly in an island with his family. And so I'd just like to send our condolences to them and to thank his family for all that he did. And on that note, I'd say thank you very much to everybody. It's been an intense and gremlin-fraught meeting, but I think we've achieved everything that we set out to do. So thank you very much, everybody. And I now declare the meeting closed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.